Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the TTE podcast. And today, I've got a really good friend of mine here with me today, Nathan Chobo. And I've been thinking, Nathan, a lot about technology and technology's impact on all of us, specifically in the context of COVID and a pandemic, and how not only have things changed, but how things are not going back to the way they used to be. I keep coming back to this idea because I keep hearing it all the time. People saying, well, I want to get back to normal. I want to get back to normal. And I just keep thinking we are not going back to normal. Like when this is all over and everybody's vaccinated and this thing is gone away, we are not going to go back to normal. The world will be fundamentally different as a result of this entire experience that 7 billion people have had. So I keep thinking about how technology has made our lives convenient enough in a way to where we can survive this, but also convenient in such a way to where you are comfortable. Are you inconvenienced? Yes. Is it annoying? Absolutely. But it could be far worse, and technology has really sort of played a part in that. And so I wanted to have you on to sort of talk through that, because I know you've got a really interesting perspective and really understand the interconnectedness of things.
Absolutely, and glad to be part. You know, as you talked about COVID, the thing about a habit is it takes a reiteration, right? And they say at least 6 times to make something into a habit. When the vaccine becomes widely available for COVID, and that's assuming there isn't another virus behind it, right? Or another
Right.
strain or whatever it might be,
Correct.
we'll probably be 2 years into this. So you're exactly right to say that all of a sudden we're going to go backwards or go back to something else when we started a new habit is highly unlikely. So, context for some of those that are listening, I work as a consultant and we support all of North America. So from 2018 until the end of 2019, I was traveling from Chicago O'Hare into Seattle, Washington, and that was on a weekly basis. So 90% travel for what we do. And I signed up for it, so I was cool with that. I started working in Canada, and that was my next project. And then March comes along, and the border shuts down, and here I've been working from home since then. So as an organization, as a company, we've talked about what next year is going to look like. We've talked about the vaccine, and the reality is we're going to work from home probably all of 2021. So when we talk about going to normal, it's not back, it's forward. And so what's the new normal going to look like? And more than likely, it's going to be 50% travel for those that want to, right? And when there's a need that the client has because you're working on a project and you need to be on site. So it truly is an interesting conversation as we think about what reverting is going to look like and its implications. And, as you and I have talked about in the past, it has a wide net as far as our social conscript and what that's going to look like going forward. And that's also indicative of even the Spanish flu after 1918.
Right.
There were certain things that people would normally do that were seen as socially acceptable. But after that pandemic, they changed, such as spitting in the street. Something stupid, but it was no longer seen as socially acceptable to do that. You got your handkerchief out. You had more social awareness of viruses and not infecting other people. So I think it still remains to be determined what all that's going to translate into, but we're starting to see the beginning of it now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you touched on something about the idea of clients being on site, because now with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and FaceTime and on all of that type of stuff, it does beg the question, do you really need to be there? Like, one of the things they've been kicking around on my job is, because we've gone to Teams and because everybody's gotten used to Teams now, because it was a bit of a hurdle when it first got introduced because people were used to Skype, and really Teams is just another version of it. But now that people have gotten it, they've got more comfortable with it, and they're more comfortable being on camera.
Right.
Because that's a bit of a social change, especially for people of a certain age group who technologies may be moving faster than what they want to keep up with. do you like one of the things they've been talking about is whenever we go back to work, and our tentative date is June 1st, but I tend to think it's probably more like September just to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the idea is, do we all get webcams at our desk now? So that way we can
Right.
just do these calls from our desk. Because today we'd have to probably leave and go find conference rooms. And, and in any organization, do you really need a conference room? But truthfully, for any organization, like if you were going to start a business today, would you actually find office space? I would argue that I would argue no. You would probably find a small office to maybe run your IT department out of. So people can
Right.
come and pick up a laptop and you can troubleshoot some things. But for the most part, there's no reason if you wanted to move to the Cayman Islands, as long as you've got an internet connection. Now there's tax implications in the whole nine. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but because my preference, if I could work at the beach every day, believe me, that's where I'd be.
Heck
I'd
yeah.
be I'd be at the fucking beach if I could be anywhere. But that being said, though, I do think that to the point that you were just making, I do think we're not. It's a look forward. It's not a look back,
Yeah.
and so I just kind of want to talk through because I think these things are happening at such a rapid pace, and we're so caught up in the mundane of the everyday because it's like, what day is this? Is this Thursday? Is this Tuesday? I have no idea. They told me Thanksgiving was last week, but honestly, it just felt like a Wednesday.
Right.
But all of this is sort of coming at you so fast. But when I think about some of these changes, like one of the ones that jumped out to me was the fact that Uber Eats bought Postmates for like $2 billion or something crazy. And my first thought was, wow, so there's consolidation of the market inside of food delivery. But then I got to thinking, well, how many times have I had food delivered in the last 6 months? Like a
Exactly.
lot. And I'm probably going to have more food delivered in the next 6 months, 6 to 9 months.
Well, and again, as you think about urban areas, again, Chicago is where I live. And so the restaurants that are around us, the only way that they can make money at this point, because we're once again in a lockdown for the next 15 days, is by having things like DoorDash and Uber
Right.
Eats. And so I'll have Yelp pop up a notification saying, hey, support your local restaurants. How do you do that? Well, you order online and they come and deliver it. So it's creating a new economic society, right, that wasn't necessarily relevant before COVID, right? So we think about necessity as the mother of all invention. And so while it looks like these things have transformed rather quickly, the reality is this: they were already there, but there
Yes.
was no reason for us to use them. So working with a client today, their process, I would say, is 90% paper-based. So think about this. It's 2020, and I'm writing as-is processes for these groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the tools that I had to document, and it almost made me vomit putting in the fucking document, is that they've got a paper bin for this line of work. A literal paper tray bin that's next to a photocopier that they got to put this work into. So it's amazing to see that was reality for them in February of this year. And now fast forward December of this year, they're completely paperless, right?
That's
So
awesome.
they're being forced to use technology in a way that makes them more efficient, right? And they didn't do it by choice. They did it because they're not in the office and they got to figure this thing out. So I hear what you're saying. It seems like it's a fast transition, but I think a lot of these elements, because Uber Eats was already available, they just weren't fully utilized. Now they're almost, a godsend. So I don't have to, cook something myself,
Right.
or pull out some leftovers. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to generate, because you and I were talking about before, Salesforce buying Slack,
Yeah.
for billions of dollars in order to compete with Teams that you had mentioned earlier. So that type of technology to technology and in making the enhancements and the improvements, I think we're going to see a lot of, especially as we go into 2021. Because it's now going to one up things. And hence, again, while we're not going to look back, we're going to look forward because we already have the momentum going that way.
I agree. And I think something you said about that got me thinking, the concept that these things were always there, and like the one company that's been uniquely positioned to take advantage of this moment is Amazon. Amazon's
Absolutely.
entire infrastructure is built to take advantage of this moment, not knowing that the moment was coming.
Yep.
Just being on the forefront of what something could be. And the key word that I keep coming back to is activation.
Yeah.
Like like COVID activated this necessity. So restaurants can't stay open unless they do this. Whenever everything opens back up and people can actually sit in a restaurant and not be fearful that they're going to catch this thing, um, that's still now a revenue stream that didn't necessarily exist for restaurants that does exist now, and I don't see them turning that off at all. I think the volume will diminish because you'll welcome people back into your restaurant with open arms and sort of have that experience.
Hmm.
But that's a revenue stream now that's not going to go away, that you can sort of rely on. And truthfully, I'm probably looking forward to the day where it's a restaurant that solely focuses on delivery. We'll make whatever you want, but you're not going to come in here. We're just going to ship it out.
And frankly, the pizza shop that we go to, they were almost set up for this, right? Because they have literally 4 tables in the place. So if you want to grab a slice, great, you can sit down, but then, get your ass out. The majority of what you see coming in are delivery drivers. And this was before COVID. So I
Right.
think you're right. The business model itself, you're going to still have your fancy restaurants and all of that. But I think your normal mom and pop shops are going to, allow themselves to be in a smaller space, but then give more impetus towards delivery. Because it's going to make sense, another revenue stream for them.
Right, absolutely. And it'll be interesting what like a landlord would charge on rent because the square footage that they need is going to be a lot smaller. Like I think about a company like WeWork that was buying all these office
Yep.
buildings and then leasing the space, and eventually they went under. But that's a business model that I don't think works anymore. I know for my company, they got rid of basically all the physical locations except for like 5 of them. So if you
Right.
worked in one of those locations, you're permanent work from home now. And it makes sense, but I like in the meetings I've been having lately, what we've kind of talked about is when you sort of unplug from work, it's really hard to plug back in after 6 months of this life. And
Yeah.
then secondly, the moment everybody gets back to work, the first thing everybody's doing is hugging everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
Like that's the first thing you're going to do and I think people take for granted sometimes that human connection that we're not designed to go this alone.
Right.
Like you need that sort of connection with people. And like I've heard people talk about how this has been really hard. Like they don't feel connected, they feel distant, and then with the whole world sort of not necessarily passing you by, but it's like time marches on and it waits for none of us.
But you know what's interesting? So Harvard Business Review released an article here October 13th, and it talked about the changes of talent management, right, and what employees are going to want. And what they did, though, they looked at post-pandemic and what has been the impact on us working from home, and they showed that on average, people extended their working time by 10 to 20%. Now, so you take out travel time, you take out some of, going
Yep.
from one physical location to another. And so that's now added back into your work time. So that's one. The other thing that I thought was highly interesting is based on Microsoft Teams, they reported a 200% increase in virtual meetings, right? So that was 2.7 billion meetings per day. And that's just in Microsoft Teams
Yeah,
because
that's
that's what they have
crazy.
access to, right?
Right.
So I think you're right. It's going to open up to where home office is definitely a go-to, and I could see that when I was trying to buy a desk. The
Hmm.
everywhere I would go and try, and I obviously had to do it online. I couldn't find them; they're all out. I tried to
Yeah.
buy my daughter a desk chair. Shit, I had to wait 3 months for it to get delivered. Right.
Right.
Uh, so I think people are definitely setting up their home to be the office place. And so I've got my office here in the house. My wife is in the living room. She's got a full desk set up, and it's almost like, a little cubicle, if you will. My
Hmm.
daughter's on the other side of the living room, and she's got her school space. And we've got whiteboards that are up. And so it basically has transformed our home into mobile offices. So that's going to obviously lead to the question of, so if you do have an office building like we were talking about before, what is it for? And I would even argue, I don't have to have a person come in to pick up the laptop, because I can have it drop shipped, right? And then through
Yeah.
online tools, they can download, the base of it, the seed, and it can expand out to whatever it is that they need.
Right. We can
So
have things pushed to them because, you get those
yeah,
updates pushed all the time.
so it's going to be interesting. But I would also argue this: um, I understand the people connection, and we want to be able to hug, and we want to be able to interact and touch, right? Because as humans, even the most hands off person at some point appreciates a hug. You just
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But I would also argue that, so my company, there's 66 people total, right? And we do a COVID and a diversity meeting every Monday. So it's around 10 o'clock in the morning. And just seeing those folks, and not just hearing them, right? But seeing them, their faces, and we're very real with each other. So it's not just a meeting, but
Right.
it's honest feelings. So the whole racial strife over, the horrendous events that have taken place, we were raw. It was very candid. And
Hmm.
so I think it changes how we use technology to not just being superficial, but using it in the moment and being raw and real with each other, even though, yes, it's through a device, but connecting through it can definitely help. And we're seeing that through some of the reports that have come out, just with using Zoom, and FaceTime and the other elements. It's pretty amazing to see how it can work. But you have to be open to that vulnerability and through using the technology itself.
Yeah, I agree, and I found that for certain people, it's moving faster than what they want to keep up. For other people, and I think about young people specifically, your Gen Zs and your millennials,
Yeah.
and I don't know, I get them mixed up. So forgive me if I'm putting you in the wrong category. I apologize. I'm becoming more and more of an old man every day, but um, I think that's, you talk about the future of work, like these are the people that are coming into the workplace who, like my nephews the other day, like we were talking, and they've never not grown up with the internet.
Right.
So we were talking about, well, when you go to get a book out of the library, they're like, oh, we just go online and we pick our books. They're like, well, how did you do it? I'm like, well, we didn't have the internet. Well, what did you
Right.
do? I'm like, we use the Dewey Decimal System. They're like, what is that? And I'm like, I do not have time to explain to you the Dewey Decimal System in all of its
But
greatness. I don't have the time for that. But these kids are coming into the workplace, and they communicate through Snapchat and through apps and
yeah,
all of this stuff. And I don't think our world from a business technology perspective has ever really kept up. And all of a sudden, we've hit a massive level of fast forward on this, in part because, to your point, the technology was getting there, but now it's been supercharged from an activation perspective because of COVID. Like there was like commentary about how Zoom was not ready for the influx of volume when the pandemic hit. Like they had to do a lot of
right.
investing internally to be able to beef up servers and all of this to be able to support the bandwidth because they weren't ready to do that just yet. But I think it's one of those things where, when opportunity strikes, you want to be in position to take advantage of it. And I just keep going back to Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon is the one company that is uniquely built to not just survive, but thrive in a pandemic because outside of the warehouse worker, and I will tell you, if you have not been to the warehouse to have a tour, you should go see that. That is
Hmm.
efficiency in a cold, raw, mathematical sort of way. There are no wasted movements, no wasted steps. They've got that thing down to a science inside one of those distribution centers. But they're just uniquely positioned to do the one thing that they do better than anybody, and they can do it to scale. So I don't know. I mean, it's a crazy time we live in. I know everybody says that, but I mean, it's just technology is
It
just
is.
it's just nuts.
So there was an article back in July of 2020, so this year, right, and it talked about Amazon, and just in 1 week, and I'm sorry, 1 month, so 3 to 4 weeks on Amazon in North America and Europe. Within that span of time, they beat Prime Day 2019 and Cyber Week 2019, right, as far as the number of sales that they had across the board. And you think about the level of services that they're offering. I mean, Amazon basically can do just about anything, right? They're through the cloud, so they offer cloud services, they offer products, they have Amazon Prime, which also includes music and video. So they're in every facet of a human's life, and then you wonder, how do they make so much money? Well, because they're in everything.
Well, right, yeah,
So
they're everywhere.
they were really positioned very well to take advantage of people being at home and having things brought to them either to the door or through devices, which is amazing.
It really is, and I think Amazon preconditioned everybody for the life because we're
Yes.
all used to ordering off Amazon and having it delivered. And where Amazon changed everything is we've gotten away from this sense of instant gratification. Like you're old enough to remember when you wanted something so bad you couldn't wait to go to the mall.
Heck yeah.
And now it's I just bought this thing on Amazon. It's delayed gratification. Now it's I bought this thing, it'll be here in 2 days.
But I think it goes both ways though, because if I want to watch a movie right now, I can go and I order it and it's there, right? And you even look at the news from today of HBO Max and the whole concept of Warner Brothers pushing out movies through that channel for that instant, I mean, to me, instant gratification, right? So
Right.
you're right. There is something about ordering something through Amazon and then having it delivered. But I think the other thing, for me at least, is I'm checking that fucking tracking, right, to see where is it and what state is it in and how long is it going to take to get to me. So it gives me a beacon, if you will, of happiness until the package actually arrives. So they've found a way to kind of short circuit our need to delay gratification and kind of feed us along until it actually happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And they do that in the spirit of transparency and keeping you engaged from a customer experience perspective, let you know, hey, it's on its
Sure.
way. And that's all marketing in all fancy terms. I mean, that's the kind of thing Jim Tressel would do, where Jim Tressel would tell you, oh, well, those kids from Akron, they play real hard. And that
Yep.
punter, he's a hell of a player. And we really respect them. Jim, you won 70-3. Yeah, but those kids
Right.
played real hard. And it's the same, it's sort of sleight of hand, but you're right. Amazon is everywhere. And now with HBO Max, I think the only thing that you miss is, and this goes back to an article that I believe was in Harvard Business Review years ago. It's the concept of a blue ocean. So
Right.
like you would not open a theater anytime after, say, I don't know, 1940, because there's blood in the water. It's a blue ocean. But Netflix could have been Blockbuster. Instead, they
Yes.
went streaming online, and then it was a blue ocean. And now everybody had to catch up with Netflix. Netflix had such a head start on everybody and that's one of the things that I think from a COVID perspective, I noticed early on was it got to the point within the first 2 months, 3 months, that shit, I had watched everything I wanted to watch on Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus. I'll be completely transparent. I am a bit of a nerd and a bit of a sucker for these Marvel movies because I didn't really grow
Absolutely.
up reading comic books, but I just feel like these movies are done with such high quality, and I just
Uh-huh.
really enjoy those movies. So I'm a bit of a sucker for those. I have watched Infinity War and Endgame, I probably would guess 70, 80 times each. Because if
Absolutely.
there's nothing on TV, I'll just go back to that because I know I'll be entertained by that movie.
And same. So having a 14-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, it's difficult not to go back to those things, and then as well as the Star Wars,
Yeah.
whole experience, and then at home, we've doubled down and reinvested in television, so it's theater quality. So when you think about having theater releases coming into your home at the same time it hits the theater itself, that's pretty amazing. But again, because this technology was already there, home theater goes back to the 80s, right? Bose. I remember the first time that
Yeah.
we sat down, in this, living room in the mall, and they showed us what Bose could do, and you're just like, holy crap. So I think there's some elements of going into a theater and sitting in a sticky chair with sticky floors. Not sure why it got sticky. We'll leave that alone. But right, so you like to be able to see that 70-foot screen, an IMAX surround sound. But with Apple's bringing out AirPod Pros, and the home theater experience itself is of quality. It makes sense that at this time you're going to have things like the HBO Max, releasing cinematic right there live. Disney, right? The whole concept of releasing Hamilton was because they couldn't do it in the theater, right? So, and how many views has that thing had?
Oh, that's
As
true.
well as
It's true. It got one out of me, but one was enough. I'm not a big. I'm just not big on musicals. I liked Hamilton. I thought it was really cool conceptually. I liked the story. I felt like I learned something, but it's just I'm not. I struggle with the idea that you and I are having a conversation and then we break into song. Nowhere in my life does that happen.
Come on now, Dennis. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah. See, right. Exactly. And you know me well enough to know I'm going to look at you like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, especially a rap battle, right? So, I mean,
a rap battle between people in the 1700s, like, huh? Like if Hamilton and these guys and Burr could see this today, they'd be confused as hell. Like,
right, what the hell?
Yeah, what's this? I don't talk like that. No, but I think go ahead.
I think it also speaks to just the fact of even Mulan, right? Now, I know that had some controversy because of the actors that, and as far as their involvement with China and all that, but the concept that Disney can come out, they already have this thing where they've, released Hamilton, Artemis Fowl, Soul, right, as an exclusive. But now, on top of that, you got to pay $30 to be able to watch Mulan early.
and people paid it. And people paid it.
Man, and I hate to admit it, but I know I did because my daughter wanted to watch it, right? So yeah, $30 and done.
And that's the thing. There's the thing. If you can spend $90 a month in DoorDash, you can probably afford to cough up that extra $30 to get Mulan early.
But here's the thing. Here's how I rationalize it. I don't have to get in my car and drive to a theater that has sticky floors and sticky seats. And again, we're not going to talk about why, but I can do it in the privacy of my own home. I can be in my underwear. I can be in my whatever, right? And I can bring out my big ass thing of popcorn. I can have a scotch or whatever I want to watch for this Mulan thing or whatever movie I want to watch. And I'm good to go. But if you go to a theater, especially if you've got 4 people, the tickets themselves are, between $8 to $14, right? Depending upon your location, where you are. Then you've got the fucking food. A thing of popcorn is $20. Soda is another $10. Yes, I said soda. A hot dog is like fucking $50. By the time you're done, from a family perspective, you've spent about $110.
Yeah, or
so
just eat
30.
Eat the 30.
I'll eat the 30. I'm good.
Eat the 30. Yeah, just eat the 30 and be good. No, you're 100% right. And it makes me think about, with all of this technology pushing everything forward, that when we come out of this and go back to, not go back, but whatever the world's going to be when we come out of this, there are going to be some industries that just quite simply don't exist anymore. And I think movie theaters is one of them because, I mean, the concept now, the idea, like you're old enough to remember the idea of a summer blockbuster. Like I remember when Speed came out, how big of a deal Speed was. I think I saw Speed 3 times that summer. And what was crazy was each time that movie went by faster and faster, like it lived up to the name. So by the end, it was like a half-hour movie when really it was like an hour, 2 hours. But the idea of a summertime blockbuster and everybody, oh, did you go see this? Did you see this? Now it's going to be like, oh, you didn't see that? Oh, well, you don't have HBO Max?
Yep. It becomes a thing like, seeing people with an Apple Watch, right? Oh, you don't have one? You're not part of the cool crowd. But I
thought that too. I fought it for so long. And then when I bought a new phone, I could get one for like $13 a month or something. I was like, throw it in there. And now that I've had it, I'm like, you know what? Okay, I get it. I get it. And what's crazy is all my watches, because I love my watches.
Yes, you do.
All my watches need batteries now because I haven't worn them in months. Because I just use the Apple Watch now. I've become that person, and
You've been that.
it's a constant reminder for me not to take a hard line on things all the time because you just never know when life's going to force you to go hard left or hard right, and before you know it,
Yeah.
you're doing the very thing you said you would never do.
But I think that'll be true also of entertainment, right? So instead of it being the summer blockbuster that you go and say, "Have you seen it?" For those that have the streaming service, it now becomes like a Thursday evening episode of Cheers, or Seinfeld or whatever is the hot thing. Did you see that episode? Oh yeah, blah 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 blah. So I think it just changes the conversation a little bit. But I'm with you. The anticipation of the blockbuster and thinking about what's the next sequel, perhaps, and building it up now is really short circuited to say, oh, I just wait for it to come out on streaming, and it's being released at the same time.
Exactly, because I think and I guess the best example of that would be the new Borat movie. They ran commercials for that like it was going to be in the theater, and it was just on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
But if you didn't know that, you would have went to the theater thinking, okay, I want to go see Borat. If you didn't know that it was on Amazon Prime. And speaking of anticipation, like one of the things I look forward to every Friday is The Mandalorian.
Yeah,
like I'm watching that every Friday, and I'm kind of glad that they release it one at a time because it does give me something a little to look forward to. Because the thing about these streaming services is that I'll go down a rabbit hole and like Narcos. Like I banged Narcos out like 5 seasons of that. I banged that out in like 2 weeks. I couldn't get enough of it.
Right.
It was all based on a true story. Like I mean, it's 3 a.m. I need to go to work in the morning, but no, I got to get this last one. I got to get this last one in. Yeah.
Because now, you're going to work is basically just putting on a nice pair of a shirt and stuff and sitting in front of a Teams meeting, right? So
no, that's you. That's you. I'm in sweats. I'm in sweats.
But that's what I'm saying is that you can be in your sweats, but as long as the top looks like you're ready to rock, no one gives a shit.
and that's the way it should be, yeah.
So you can be up till 3:00 in the morning watching whatever you want, but as long as your first meeting, you can rock it out. Life is good. So I'm with you though. Yeah. I mean, Narcos. So I recently signed up for Peacock, NBC's, and I love Saturday Night Live. Well, I could not find the 90s versions unless I had paid for it, to be able to watch those episodes, because to me, that was like the best decade of SNL.
Right.
Well, lo and behold, the Peacock has it all. It's got every episode all the way from the very beginning to the very end. So the streaming services have definitely found a niche for their audience to draw you in, and then the subscription price, comes into play. So I think, that's definitely a revenue stream that entertainment's going to have. And if that's at the death of movie theaters, they're going to do it, right?
Oh, well,
so
yeah.
It's no different than radio.
Yep, you took the idea right from me. I think the song's "Video Killed the Radio Star."
It's exactly right. Yep. So they're going to do whatever's necessary for that revenue stream. But the other thing I think is important to keep in mind is that retail and movie theaters and entertainment itself was already hitting a decline prior to COVID, right? So it's not as if COVID has done this to them, right? And so all of a sudden you have the rise of Amazon, which means the death of limited brands. No. They were already facing financial straits before, right? There were definitely issues within the papers and so forth. So this simply accelerated their demise as well. So it's accelerated the advent of tools, technology that was already there, and put it into warp speed, right? But then it also has given suffocated, if you will, some of these other industries and businesses, because to me, like Blockbuster, they have simply followed a business plan and strategy without taking the temperature of people and trends. So millennials and Gen Zs and the double A's and whatever else is out there, they are the future. And if you're not speaking to them, especially think about the kids that have never known anything beyond the internet. And now I think about my daughter being 9 and she's in virtual learning, right? This is the reality for them. And so if businesses are not accommodating and positioning themselves the right way, they will be as irrelevant as Blockbuster.
And I think the company you just described is Kodak.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's really who you describe. And I also think your daughter is 9, and my nephews are 12, 9, and then my niece is 6. They're coming of age during all of this. So
Yes.
they're going to be able 50 years from now to talk about what it was like as a kid to do distance learning and have your teacher on a screen and talk to you back and forth, this, that, and the third. And there's a lot of articles that talk about like the impact of doing all of this distance learning for so long that these kids are not necessarily engaged with the work the way they should be, or parents are stepping in to help their kids with their schoolwork and they're comfortable doing it from like a reading perspective, but they're not comfortable doing it from a math perspective.
But see, so we had that today, right? So my wife and I are relearning the new math
Yes.
for the 4th grade, right? But here's the cool thing. At least here with this teacher that we have, and I know each teacher is going to be a little bit different, but they have breakout rooms. So when I listen to my daughter and she's working on a project, math or English or science or whatever it is, she's with 3 or 4 other kids. It's a mini team, right?
Okay.
And so when you think about school, or at least how I think about school, is it should prepare our kids to be adults and enter the workforce. So when I think about my day, today's been a long day, but it was back-to-back meetings on Zoom and MS Teams. That's where I spent it. And I spent most of my time facilitating those sessions and helping to drive outcomes. As I have stepped back and listened to her and how she interacts with her teammates, if you will, she's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think as adults, those of us that haven't grown up, within this digital age, because again, you and I remember, as personal computers were coming out, right, and how it became adopted and all those things, we have to step outside of our social norm and understand that what they're doing right now has a direct correlation to the future of business. And it's setting them up in the right way. And so not to discourage it, there may be some social awkwardness, true, but it's no more awkward than how we're conducting business, and we're doing it successfully right now as well.
Well, anything is awkward when it's new.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so once it becomes an established, adopted sort of thing, then it's not awkward anymore. And before you know it, it just becomes part of the social contract. So like the idea at this point that we would live life without the internet is a non-starter.
Exactly. Or even without a computer or a device, right?
Or just a device in general, right? Like the idea that you wouldn't, but the idea that you would be, say, 17 without a cell phone is such a crazy concept. But you can remember, I know I can remember being 17 without a cell phone and I was just fine. But it was a big deal to have a pager.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I'm starting to date myself now, but the idea that you had a pager, it was a big deal if you had a pager. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I remember at one time I had a pager and a cell phone. I thought, this is dumb. Why would you page me if you could just call me?
I didn't get my first cell phone until 2000, right? So I know exactly what you're talking about. And I remember getting my ass beat because I didn't call my parents to say that I was going to be late coming home, right? So, but, so there's a trade-off, with technology. There are certain things that, our kids don't understand. Dad, why couldn't you call home? Well, because I didn't have the 25 cents in my pocket, to use a payphone. What's a payphone? So
what's a payphone?
We're going to give up things, right, for newer things. And the other cool element regarding the education component is her teacher is actually sending her like science projects to have. So now you talk about Amazon and its utility even through education. That stuff could be drop shipped to the kid's house, I'm thinking future state, but drop shipped to the kid's house, and now they're part of the science project. And the byproduct of that, at least for me in my mind, and I know, not everyone's going to agree with this, is it's forcing parents, maybe kicking and screaming, but to become part of the educational process.
Yeah,
because before this, you talk to a parent and it's, well, what is the school teaching? And so parents would pay, premium for private education and those sort of things. And it was kind of off of their list to have to worry about and then they have to do. Now, because of all remote learning, you don't have that luxury. You need to be part of the conversation. So I think we've had probably 3 or 4 conversations with her teacher because it is new, right? And there's a lot of clunkiness to it, but to make her learning better, because I want her to perform and kick ass when she becomes an adult and goes to work. And the same thing with my son. We've had a ton of conversations with his online teachers as well. But it's forcing us to be part of the conversation where in a normal year, I may only see the teacher twice, for parent-teacher meetings. And then as long as, the kids' grades are good, I'm out,
No. I think that's 100% right. And speaking of like being active and more active in your kid's role, I don't know if you've seen the video of, there's a woman, I think she's in Michigan, and her son this is back when kids were going to school. So this is like November. This is like right after the election. And her son came home and they had a map of the 50 states and they had to color in either the state red or blue, depending on who won the state. And so the woman recorded her conversation with the teacher because the woman was upset that her son had colored certain states blue when she felt that the outcome was in question. And I think it goes to your point of this is exactly what this woman's doing. She's being more active and being more, of a participant in her son's education, which is what I think everybody wants. But it was just interesting to see. I sort of question if we didn't have COVID and everybody's anxiety is on 11, like how much energy and passion is she really putting into this phone call with the teacher? The teacher was just like, well, like, I understand what you're saying and I get that you're upset, but this is going a certain way. And this woman was adamant about the fact that, you are teaching them the wrong things and the outcome is still in doubt. And it was,
I had 2 reactions to that. One was, get the fuck over it, which I know is not the right, reaction, whatever, but I do agree with you. She's involved in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
And the hardest thing for teachers to get is parents to volunteer in the classroom. But now, we're doing that on a daily basis. And it is kind of funny because I think our kids are also now more aware of our social environment. So my daughter asks all the time, hey, when is Rachel Maddow coming on? Because that's the woman she wants to hear talk about what's happened under, the Trump administration. So, and again, she's 9, but she's now socially aware of what's happening politically around us to where she wants to be part of the conversation and she wants to understand.
Did you tell her that 30 years from now, she will eagerly anticipate 60 Minutes on Sunday nights?
I haven't laid that down for her yet, but I'm sure we'll have that conversation.
It's coming. There's a podcast I listen to called The Press Box. And it's 2 guys who grew up in like publishing and they've worked in media for a number of years. So it's really just commentary on the media at large. And they cover a lot of things, whether it's politics or sports or whatever. And they talked about on the last episode about one of the quintessential American experiences in life is watching the late game on CBS on a Sunday and immediately rolling into 60 Minutes. And I thought to myself, my God, that just describes my entire from the time I was born. I could remember watching at 4 o'clock at San Francisco at the Rams on CBS. And then after that, here comes 60 Minutes and Mike Wallace and Andy Rooney.
Yep.
And that's just
Yep.
what we did. And listen, we had cable in the house, but that's just what we did. And now here I am at 41. I'm like, oh, look, so-and-so's on 60 Minutes. And I get excited like I'm some old man. But it's coming.
I'm right there with you. It is. And, it's going to be interesting to see, what does that look like 40 years from now as we're talking about how technology has really changed due to COVID. Will it still be, on a television set with some streaming capabilities, or is it going to be something different at that point in time? Maybe it's you put your glasses on and you can sit back and watch your favorite TV show by blinking your eyes. So,
that's scary. That's like Google glasses and all that. Like that was a step. We weren't quite ready for that step. Like contact lenses where I could sleep and still watch TV. It might be that might be a leap too far. But then again, it's 2020. You would have thought, according to the Jetsons, we'd have flying cars by now.
I mean, going back to The Mandalorian, there's now a set of goggles that you can put on to where you can actually be part of the Mandalorian story, and it's all around you virtually. So
that VR stuff is cool. And speaking to this, now I'm gonna bring this full circle. I hate to say this, but it's just true. They had a story on 60 Minutes years ago about how they were doing skin grafts for war veterans who had been injured in combat, and how skin grafting is very, very painful. So what they were doing is they were putting them, they put VR headsets on them. And it's so immersive in the VR headset that they felt no pain relative to the skin graft.
Exactly.
It was nuts. Like I told my tattoo guy, I was like, because he had one and let me try it. I was like, holy shit. Like I would get tattooed all day. Because it was like a roller coaster, the one that I was in. And like everywhere you look, 300, I'm spinning around the room and it's fucking everywhere. It's all around. It's completely immersive. I was like, oh yeah, I'd absolutely get tattooed. And now that Oculus thing's $300, I think my next Vegas trip, I might pack that and tell them, hey man, I got a 10-hour session in me. I'm just going to go ahead and put this thing on and let you go on about your day.
As long as you can keep on, tapping up my body, life is good.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not going to feel a fucking thing with this VR business. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So it will definitely be interesting to see how we go forward, right? And what sort of social norms come out of this, and what does this propel us to? I've got my seatbelt on, right? So lock and loaded. Let's go.
Yeah, no, I would agree. One of the things I do want to ask you though is, I keep coming around to this thought or this idea that I just think companies now, because technology has evolved to a place to where we've proven now that we can work from anywhere. And I think about a lot of times when we would leave the office and take a break and just go to Starbucks, and there would just be people on a laptop with some headphones in, and they might be studying or they might be on a phone call or what have you. And that was a pretty common thing. But now it's to the point we've proven that we can work from pretty much anywhere. I wonder how flexible companies are going to be in the future relative to letting you work wherever you want to work. Because one of the discussions I know I've been having with my boss is this idea that I need to come into the office every day is for the birds. Like at this point, like I know my mom's got a good friend, and he's a good friend of mine as well. I think he goes into the office twice a year.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't go in. And I would say, I think I could see myself in a perfect world, I would go into work 2 or 3 days a week.
Right.
And I'd work from home the rest of the time and just have that sort of flexibility. I mean, I save so much money on gas and not buying lunch every day. And I mean, the dealership sent me a text message talking about it's time to get your car maintenance. I'm like, no, it's not. I don't go anywhere.
So it's interesting because just through MSNBC, they did a survey, and 3 in 4 workers want to return to the office, right? So now this is only, I think, of like maybe 2,033 office workers that were surveyed worldwide. So it wasn't just within one area. But what they're looking for is a hybrid model. And so you're exactly right. to think that we have to be in the office 5 days a week, that takes us back to the 1960s, which I know is some of the bosses that you and I have worked for. That's where they started their career. And so that's what is socially norm for them, right?
Yeah.
But what they've talked about is that of the respondents, half of them want to have socialization spaces. So like coffee areas, lounges, terraces. So it isn't to me so much that this is saying people want to return to work. It's that people want to have an open space to your point, like you were talking about, being able to go to a Starbucks and just relax a minute. Because when you're stuck in your home, there's only so many quadrants that you can go into to where you can quote unquote relax. But when home becomes work and work becomes home, there's less ability to do that. I want to go to a park, but because of social distancing and current demands within the Chicago area, we're not allowed to. So I think what people are looking for is just to get out of their home. Right.
Yeah, because your anxiety's on 15 right now. Like it shouldn't be. It would be a social taboo, I think, still, that if I took my lunch hour, let's say there was a meeting that was scheduled over lunch, and I decided to take that call, but I took that call while I went for a walk in a park.
Yep.
I think that's still a social taboo, because in your mind, it's like, why would you do that? You should be at work. And what I'm saying is that we're never going back to the way things used to be. What I'm doing today is representative of where the world's going. That I can go for a walk and have this conversation with you at the same time.
Right, because you're opening yourself up to the environment. You're now creating a space to where you can think, openly and be more agile. And so now the benefit of that conversation should actually come out. Now, if you're going to the park and you're watching the butterflies, right?
Right.
There's a problem. So the other thing that they talked about in this article, at least, was having areas for concentration pods or phone booths. So I think you need to have the balance. And I think as we look at companies like Google and those are willing to work outside of the box, having the ability, to your exact point, of going and walking in the park to have a business conversation, fantastic. But then also allowing me to go into a dedicated space to where the only thing that I have in front of me, it's me and my computer or me and my device. So now I can have that span to fully concentrate on developing this article, this topic, whatever the work product is. And then once I'm done, I pack up my stuff and I either go back to the park or I go home or I do whatever I need to do. But I think the time card itself, punching in, sitting down at my desk for, 10 hours a day, which is what it would usually turn out for you and me, and then punching the card back out so I can then go home. I think that is being challenged through this pandemic. Is that absolutely necessary? And the resounding response is it's not. It's not necessary because people are being productive without being in a physical office, without having a boss supervising me to make sure I'm getting stuff done.
No, you're 100% right. And I think about, speaking of technology, you hit on something that triggered this thought. I can remember a time where you had the largest work bag I'd ever seen on a human being in my life. And you would say, well, this is my office. This is my mobile office. And you would go through it. It would be very systematic. It's like, I got this, and I got this, and I got this. And here's my aspirin if I have a headache, and there's mouthwash, and this and that. I'm like, oh, shit, it's fucking CVS inside this thing. But and I think about it now, it's for you, it's probably an iPad Pro, and that's it. You don't need anything else because it's all right there. And I think it's that sort of evolutionary sort of thing that has been sort of supercharged from an activation perspective as a result of COVID. And I think, using technology as a means to just improve lives and make it better, but also to try to find ways to take away the stress and anxiety. Like I know for me, probably in July, sitting around bored, I went and bought a PlayStation. Here I
Yeah.
am, 41 years old, playing video games, something I never thought I'd do. And I
Yeah.
only really play one game, and that's Madden. And I got friends of mine because now, like, even my brother had to remind me, he's like, Dennis, you got to remember, you have not played Madden since PlayStation 2. This is PlayStation 4. Because I'm getting mad. Like, what the hell? Why doesn't this work? This and the third. So, like,
Uh-huh.
and like I have friends of mine who play and they want to play online all the time, and then now it's to the point where you can all play together. Like you can start like a season and each of you could take a franchise and play it. So that's what
Yep.
we did. So I played a good friend of mine last night, a guy I grew up with. And the first game we played, it's the first time I'd ever played him. We tied. And I was proud of myself, like, okay, well, maybe I'm not too bad. Yesterday I played him going into the third quarter or going into the fourth quarter. I think I was down like 3 points. And then all of a sudden, the fucking wheels came off, and I'm throwing interceptions left and right. I think he scored like 30 points on me in the
Oh.
fourth quarter, and I was like, well, okay, it doesn't matter. But just the fact that I had to find something to do, and I think part of the reason why I started this podcast, to be honest, is because I was looking for a creative outlet because
Yep.
I wrote a couple pieces over the summer, and I liked writing, and I still want to write more, but I wanted a vehicle where I could just have a conversation and express what I was thinking and feeling. Because for me, in order to write, I have to organize all my thoughts. And that was
Yeah.
taking way too long. Like the last piece I wrote took me about a month to organize my thoughts. And I was like, this is taking too long. But doing a podcast, I found, was a lot easier. Plus, it gives me a chance to sort of connect with someone like you because I haven't really, I mean, outside of a couple text messages here and there, I can't remember the last time I talked to you.
I know. Well, and so for your audience that's listening, you have to keep in mind that you and I worked together for, what is it, 5, 6 years?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And it was normal for us to have, a Friday afternoon conversation to where we would just chop it up and, we'd have a great conversation, but it was the end of the week. We had all of our work done, so I understand needing the outlet for
Yeah,
sure. Right. And
exactly.
knowing you as I do and how, you want to have these types of conversations, this makes 100% sense. Uh, for me to fill the void, I went down a different path and got more political. So I'm now working with the aldermen of our area and supporting a community club. And so we've built the thing from the ground up, including website and leveraging Slack channels and mobilizing, a whole field group. But you got to do what you got to do.
You're right.
Got to get
You're
your
right.
outlet.
You're right. You got to do what you got to do. And I will say, um, in my mind, so I could be off base here, but in my mind, the whole concept of like an alderman and whatnot is very much like a Chicago, New York sort of thing. And I just
Yeah.
don't think that if you don't live in a big city like that, you might not necessarily get the concept of it. But I guess I'm more encouraged by just the fact that you are doing something proactive and getting involved. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing. I just couldn't sit still, with all this going around and your thoughts are all over the place and you start,
Yep.
for me, I start second guessing and questioning myself on everything. And I just found like I was in my own way, like I was in my own headspace, like way, way, way too much. And so I needed like, creative outlets. So by all means, like I get it completely. And I think you do get something out of that sort of interaction that
Yeah.
you're talking about. Because I think the last time, um, not the last time, but I remember I was in Chicago for work and we were going to get together, but we couldn't because the
Yep.
way they had our schedule, they had us bussing around and dinners and all of this. And I didn't get back to my room till like 10 o'clock each night.
Exactly.
You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? And it was like, well, I mean, I appreciate all like we went to, the first night we went to someplace down on the lake where they take you up and you can see everything.
Oh
I
yeah.
can't.
Yep.
I can't think of what it's called because we were going to get together that night and then we couldn't do it because it was late and I think you were flying out the next morning. And then the next
Exactly.
day they took us down to the observatory And
Yeah.
they had like the Chicago Philharmonic play for us while we were eating dinner and all of this.
Yep.
And what made it so bad was the Bears had a home game on Monday night. And I was in one of the last buses and we had to go past Soldier Field and the traffic was
Uh-huh.
all backed up. It was like, oh my God, this is,
Uh-huh.
yeah, this, I was like, this is what like living in the city is
Yes.
really, really, is really, really like. And I just don't think that people quite get that concept. So,
No,
but
I understand.
yeah,
But yeah, I
absolutely.
agree. You got to get sometimes out of your own headspace, and whether you're providing information through a podcast or you're connecting neighbors to each other so they can better understand the struggles that everyone is dealing with. I think again back to our conversation regarding the social interaction. Life is truly what you make it, right? And I know you know this more than most because when you got to pull yourself out from your own bootstraps, you can choose to say, woe is me, or you can choose to make something better. So for those that are really needing that social interaction, do something that we probably haven't done in at least a decade. Pick up the phone and make that phone call, right?
Yeah.
And have that conversation with someone that maybe you haven't had in a while. And so we're even doing that through our business. Yeah, Zoom is great, right? And Teams is great, and you can see people's faces. But there's times where you just need the one-on-one, and a phone call can do. We've even encouraged our kids to have pen pals, right? And so it's kind of going some old school. I get it. But just to bring back some of those emotions of what do you feel like when you get a letter from someone that you haven't talked to, in a couple months or a year, or whatever the time span has been.
Well, you're
So,
right. That sort of personal touch that you can't,
yeah.
because like someone took the time to think enough of you, and it reminds me of a time where um, making NIGO phone calls so many years ago, and we
Okay,
had
you have to say for people that don't know what a NIGO is, not
oh
in good order.
yeah, not in good order. Sorry, that's right. I've got an audience that might not know what that is, so that's
True.
inside industry lingo. But we would have to make phone calls when there was discrepancies in the paperwork, and we would
Yep.
have to make these phone calls. And what we decided to do in an effort to create a bit of a personalized experience is we would pick two or three people a month for people that we interacted with on the phone and just write them a personal note.
Yep.
And we got so much positive feedback out of that. And I know for me, I would never write it like specifically to like a financial advisor. I would always
Right.
write it to their assistant because after a while, you kind of know it's those assistants that make the office move.
Yes, they do.
They make the office move because they don't have the license. That
Right.
guy or woman is there, and I'm not saying that they don't do anything because that's unfair to them. But a lot of them are just there because they've got the license. They can make the recommendation legally, can sign off on the paperwork and send it off and say, yeah, it was a good investment and here's why. And talking
Yep.
very like large platitudes without any real specifics, right? But it's the assistants because I would call and just say, he doesn't really want this fund, does he? He wants this one. Yeah, he wants that one. That's all I needed, Sally. Thank you.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so
And
you're
so
right.
So I think, it's a healthy conversation to understand the current technology environment that we're in, taking advantage of those things. But then I also think there's a healthy element of, rolling it back and making those personal connections. Because at the end of the day, we're humans and we absolutely need those pieces as well. So to me, it's really trying to find the balance. And that is really the key of life. If you can find the right balance for both, work, home, leveraging technology where we can, taking advantage of it, but then also finding those moments for that personal connection, we can get through this pandemic and whatever else the future is going to really bring at us.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would think globally we get through this, we can probably get through anything else. One last thing I want to ask you. So 9 months from now, do you think you're still traveling 90% of the time, or do you think they cut that back?
So I'll give you two answers, right? Because in our business that we had before of doing audit work and whatnot is always it depends.
Yeah.
So 9 months from now, the question will be how available is the vaccine, right? So that's a factor. If the vaccine is widely available and not only can I get access to it, but also my clients can get access to it, we're good to go.
Yeah.
If it's not, then that's a non-starter. Personally, and I think you know me well enough, fuck yeah, man, get me on that plane every week of the month and let's roll this bad boy, right?
Right.
But
Exactly.
but part of that, is just it's my temperament, and being a for real Hungarian gypsy, I like the travel, I like the people, I like the interaction. So yeah, but I think as a business, and this is kind of where our owners come into play. It's is it necessary because this year that's been one expense that we've seen off of our books and off of the client's invoice, right? So so there's a market benefit to not jumping on a plane and having a hotel and a per diem and all of those things for when we're on site. So I think what it's going to translate into is when you're first starting and kicking off a project, you need that FaceTime.
Yeah.
So more than likely we'll be on site for that. When you're going through a full implementation and you've got a ton of people working on core software systems, I can see us being on site, but there's going to probably be months in the project that we're not needed to have our faces there. And I think we've now discovered that we can be extremely effective and persuasive and still keep our connections remotely, that will take advantage of that. And what that does for us is it opens up the candidate pool for those that are a little leery of 90% travel. And so if a person doesn't want to have as much, maybe they only want 10%. I think at this point we're open to have that conversation. So it now opens up the talent pool to now bring in other folks that can be extremely effective, but just didn't want to have the travel. And I think that's going to translate into other businesses as well, to where, thinking about a large insurance carrier there in Columbus, if they don't have to have this fantastic IT developer or, business transformation expert, in that specific metro, maybe they can hire them, but, they live currently in the UK or, New York or LA, and they can still do everything remotely, but the organization gains the benefit of, their talent, their thought process, and what they bring to the table. So it's worth it. And you don't have to pay for, moving fees or office space. So to me, it's really a win-win if we can get, the senior leadership of those organizations to think future versus how do we go back?
Right. And I think there's going to be, I feel like there is a desperate need, and I say desperate only in the sense of it's a very human thing, but there's a desperate desire to want to go back to the way things used to be.
Yes.
And like, for instance, I hear this all the time about, oh, it was so great in the 50s. Like, yeah, maybe for some, but not for all.
Right.
But and that's an extreme example. But the idea that we're going to go back, and one of the things I keep trying to express to people on my job is the culture that we had before all this started is never coming back. A
Right.
brand new culture is going to take its place because collectively we've all gone through something, and there is something to be said about shared experience. And I think shared experience is a very powerful sort of thing. Like, we're not going to be the same. We are fundamentally different as a result of this.
Yep.
And now we have to climb this hurdle about convincing people to take a vaccine and
Yep.
the whole nine. And I'm a little leery about walking around with a piece of paper saying that I've been vaccinated, because that feels too much like freedom papers to me. And
Yes.
as a black man, that's just really uncomfortable for me to be
Yep.
carrying around a piece of paper saying that I'm vaccinated. But I get why they're going to do it. I've even heard today that they're talking about in Europe, if you're part of the EU, I guess you get an EU card, that they're going
Yep.
to apply like a sticker to they're going to issue you a brand new EU card with an indication that you've been vaccinated.
Exactly.
That's and so it's coming. Like you and I get it. There's a real necessity for it because you want to know who's had it and who hasn't and the whole nine. And I get it, but there's just something really uncomfortable. And I'm saying that only because when I think about human nature over the course of history, now this vaccination or lack of a vaccination could be weaponized against you.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I think you're exactly right. We're in a moment in time that is going to fundamentally change us. And when you mentioned that, what it brought to my mind was 9/11, right? Those of us who lived through that moment, there's a distinct change. So there's a life before 9/11 where we thought that we were invincible. America was the best country in the world. No one's ever going to attack us on our own soil. And then there's after 9/11 where
You're
we got
taking your
wiser.
shoes off you're taking your shoes off at the airport.
Right. And you're doing it, so frankly, as a guy that travels, again, once a week it was, happy to do so to make sure that, we're all safe as we go on this plane to then do the rest of our day's business. Right. So there's going to be fundamental changes that we just have to embrace. And
like that's what I use that in PlayStation. That's how I get to the week. And at the end of the week, I know I can eat a really good burger and fries and watch The Mandalorian. Like
that's right.
So I get it's the small things in life, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, listen. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it, man. And we'll catch up soon. This is fun. We'll have to do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.